All right, it may be no surprise to anybody, but I have a goal. My goal is to crack the code for gardening and figure out planting schedules, when to plant, how much to plant, just all that good stuff to meet my family's needs, maybe plus a little bit. And so I've spent a couple of years doing that. I just want to kind of share with you guys what I've figured out so far, but how you can also tweak it a little bit and make it work your while, just so you can get more into your garden and really get it to thrive as much as possible. But it's crazy windy today, and this poor cucumber just wants to hold on. So let's give it a helping hand. What do you say? Go ahead and feed this bad boy back in there. I'm back here at the workstation. So it's crazy windy today, and I feel like you guys don't really want to hear like a bunch of wind rumble. So I'm gonna talk about really starting seeds and for the upcoming seasons. And it seems kind of crazy because we're just about into the first day of summer, but we're already planning out our fall into winter garden. And I mean, we'll be planting in winter as well, but not as much. So typically what we've done is we've planted roughly, like, I'd say late September into early October. And the thought process was it's nice and cool, everything's gonna grow good, and then we're gonna get a nice harvest for fall. And truth be told, we don't really get that great of a harvest. We get, for fall, we'll end up getting it in like late winter to really early spring. And that just doesn't work for us because we kind of go through the whole winter, and I'm sitting here watching these plants that could more than likely thrive, but they end up struggling at some points because of the temperatures, and I don't want to do that. So this year I started adjusting everything for spring and really started to crack this code, and I feel like I'm on the cusp of it, but I could be short. So as far as like seed starting stuff goes, it's, you know, the first thing first is like get a schedule, and I'm going to show you right now what we're doing for our schedule. All right, so we've got two 72 trays here. I think there's, yeah, 72. And we've got a bunch of stuff going here. So this is all cabbage. And this is all broccoli. This is the first tray of broccoli. So we've got a lot going on. And you can see I just have them sitting out here. And the biggest concern about these is bolting. So I planted these 4 days ago. And you can see we do have some cabbage starting to come up already. That's crazy. So that's really fast. And to put that into perspective, when I plant that stuff inside, it usually takes it about, literally like the package says, 7 to 10 days for it to germinate. And here we are 3 days later and it's starting to germinate. So it's 88 degrees outside right now. It's probably cooler in the shade. Hold on, hydrate. Super important. Super important. So we're worried about bolting, you know, especially where I am in zone 8A in North Carolina. Bolting is a big issue. So we've kind of gone back and forth, and you know, we've got this bed over here. I'll take you to it. So this bed right here is totally empty, and it's going to be for Brussels sprouts. But there's always a big but, right? I've totally mulched this bed, and it's been sitting for a couple weeks. It's going to have a couple more weeks of sitting, just totally empty. But if I come out here, and this is really important, I want you to remember this part. If I touch here, I can really feel the heat. But if I slide my hand up underneath, it is noticeably cooler up underneath here. I know what you're thinking. Yes, so what? It's cooler. It's still hot outside. Things are going to bolt. Well, let's discuss that for a second. So just to kind of keep everybody up to date, if you've been following the channel for any amount of time, these are the hybrid Brussels sprouts that we're growing, and they're just sitting out here doing their thing. They actually need to get a little bit of water, so we'll do that. But they're growing. Not overly concerned about them bolting. And so one of the things that I've thought for a long time, and I've been doing a lot of reading about this lately, is the bolting process. What causes it to bolt? So bolting is definitely from heat. We all know that. But it's from the roots getting hot, not necessarily the leaves. So that's where this mulch comes into place. So I was reading about it and, you know, the temperature fluctuations under mulch and stuff like that. And from what I understand, mulch can lower the soil temperature by 10 to 20 degrees. Now I'm going to be cautious and I'm going to say 10 degrees. I don't even want to play that, oh, it's definitely 20 degrees. I'm not going to do that. But if it's 88 here now, then it's 78 on the soil. And then you add a little bit of water and you can bring it down a little bit so you can see where we're going with this, hopefully. So that's why we're thinking that these are going to work pretty good. Now, I did start these seeds, and I did start them outside, but am I going to leave them outside? And the question to that becomes, I don't know. I don't know what I want to do yet. I'm thinking what I'm going to do is I'm going to let everything germinate, let everything come up, do what it's going to do, and then I'll put it in the sun and just kind of keep an eye on it. Now the problem is going to be watering it, and I got a lot of seeds here. And so it's going to dry out really fast in this heat. So more than likely I am going to end up bringing them back inside and putting them under my seed shelf, just depending on, you know, the water, how much rain we get and all that stuff. But we have a schedule made up, and so this is a really important part. In this schedule, we've got different times in which things can go in the ground. Now I'm really lucky and blessed, and my state has basically a whole planting schedule online for me to look at from my extension service, and there's a good possibility that yours does too. So all I did is I googled, you know, Eastern North Carolina planting dates, and then up popped it. So a lot of other states will provide this for you, and it's to your benefit. So this is something really good that you can use, and mine has a chart and everything. I can go through it and see what it all says, and you know, when's the best time, the worst time, when to seed it, when to transplant it, all that stuff. So I'm using that to my advantage. If we can do a little bit of yo-yo here, these are going to go into the ground around the first week of July. Okay, now these are all just perennial flowers. Don't worry about these at all. We're just going to leave these outside and keep them watered. But these are going to go out in the first week of July. So we started these 2 weeks ago. And I actually came back and added some fertilizer a couple days ago, which hasn't really had time to work in, but we're going to push this growth as fast as possible. So fertilizing this, pushing the growth, getting it to a decent size, transplanting it in the garden is really going to move this forward in a positive direction for us. Now, this cabbage and broccoli, we're not going to put in until about August. So I know you're probably thinking, wow, you just started it and you still got 8 weeks to go. And you're exactly right. Ben may have gotten a little excited. That being said, if we don't push the fertilizer to this heavy, we can give it in spurts just enough to keep it going, then we can kind of keep it small until we want it to go. So we'll keep it small throughout this month. You know, maybe once everything pops, we start to get maybe the beginning of a true leaf, we're going to throw some fertilizer to it. And then we're going to just let it sit, let it keep growing, keep it watered, keep it going. And then in another 2 weeks, right before we start getting ready to put out, we'll start pushing more fertilizer to it. So I'll put a slow release in just like I've done before. But then I'll also probably start watering it a little bit with some like fish fertilizer or something just to kind of push it, because we really want a healthy, strong plant going into the garden, especially this time of year, and we want to get it up and running. Now in a perfect world, I'd have just trays lined up all on here, starting them for fall, and that may end up happening, it may not. I think we'll probably, like I said, end up putting these inside, keeping them nice and cool once they get going, keeping them going, especially right now because they're all in the shade, they're not getting a lot of sun, so it won't be a whole lot of shock to them. If we were to put them out there where they're getting full sun, then it could kind of be an issue, but we're planning not to do that. So the first things to go in the garden is the Brussels sprouts, then we have our cabbage, then we have our broccoli, then we're going to get into our rutabagas, beets, radishes, lettuce is going to be one of the final things to go in. Peas will go in. All that stuff will start to go in around the same time. And so you'll see that what we'll do is we'll start and then we'll work our way down. And like for me, it's a little bit different because I sell seedlings, but what I'll also do is I'll start every 2 weeks sowing more and more and more. And so then we start ramping it up, and this is basically creating almost like a seedling factory. So, you know, after these come up 2 weeks later, if we want to do more, we'll start another tray of them. Same with the broccoli. So I am going to do this with the broccoli. This is all of my heirloom broccoli, and I'm going to do the same thing. So we have Calabrese broccoli in these 4 rows right here, and this one is a gypsy broccoli, which I actually believe is a hybrid. But we're also going to get some more, and I'm going to try and get some heat tolerant broccoli so I can get it in the ground. It'll be a little bit more forgiving, and then it can kind of push and make it through that period. So we'll do those, we'll start those seeds. I'm basically going to order them today or tomorrow, and then when they get here, we'll plant them probably in the next week or so. Once these come up, then we'll go, and that's going to be our trigger point. So once we see stuff coming up, we know we can sow again. And so then we'll just move right down the line. But let's say you're like, you know what, Ben, screw you, screw the fall planting. I want to talk about summer plants because after all, this is the garden season, right? So there's a couple things. Just as seed starting, you can succession sow. So look at these husked tomatoes right here. I put this one in first. I came back in a week later. I put this one in. Came back a week later and I put this one in. And then I came back a week later and put that one in. And you can see the progression in height on it. And so that way, so a lot of times I feel like these plants will kind of run their course. And so that'll kind of work its way down and we'll get more harvest over a longer period. May not be big, huge harvests, but we'll still get harvests. And so what we also did is we propagated some. And I know I've done a couple propagation videos, and it seems to me like a lot of people don't like to really dabble in propagation too much, but this is an amazing way to keep it going. So if you find a plant, you really love it, you want to keep growing it, and you can get a second planting in, then do so. So like this new tomato bed back here, we fully planted it at this point, and it's all propagations. Every single thing in here has been propagated, did not start another seed at all. And I'm going to give you a timeline right now on when I saw things start to develop and how long. And so you can kind of think to yourself, like if I started a seed, it would take this long, but if I propagated it, I get to this size. First ones to go in were these Romas here. So these were all propagations. I put them in 3 weeks ago, and a month ago, I started the cutting. So you can see that in 1 month, how big they've gotten. Now, if you started tomato seeds, you know they don't get that big that fast. So this is a really good way to start that process. And all of these, again, are propagations. And these have been started 2 weeks. So I took the cutting, I started them as soon as they got some roots and I got this cleared out, I put them in. And this one, this is all new growth in the past 5 days right here. So you can see that there's definitely growth. Like this is new growth. This is new growth. And this cherry tomato does not have any new growth, but it had plenty of roots and it looks just fine. Now, truth moment, this one has no new growth and it may not make it. Now I have seeds for next year. I've sped up the process dramatically and I've moved on from it. So we know now how we can kind of keep things going, and this propagation technique for a lot of things works really good, especially tomatoes. If you could get a second planting of these right here, sweet potatoes, then they would do great. So, you know, there's other stuff too. Let's see if I walk over here. Another garden favorite, and when I say favorite, I mean a favorite. Who doesn't grow this? This basil. I mean, all you got to do is cut it, stick it in water, and it'll root in no time. And you've got more basil to grow. So if this is starting to bolt, we can cut it, root it, and if we didn't want to take care of it, we could just let it bolt and then come in and stick in another one and start right away. You know, a couple weeks and you'd have it in. So that's kind of where we sit with that. Yeah, it's like I said, it's pretty damn windy. But you know, there's a lot of things that you can do and you can propagate in order to kind of speed up this process. So taking advantage of that really helps. And again, like I know based on my experience from last year that if I put my tomatoes in mid-July and I was just starting to get a harvest off of my determinate tomatoes around our first frost. And if I sped that up by about a month, then I would be good. So, I mean, we'll find out this year, you know. We'll find out if we're gonna get a full harvest, you know, a decent harvest before, because it was raining tomatoes last fall. I mean, they were dropping as fast as they could while they were still green. So we know that we kind of had an issue, but I was worried about sunlight in that bed, and it didn't turn out to be an issue at all. Talk about direct sowing. Green beans, I've started them in as late as August and got a decent harvest off of them. So we've done that before. They work out really good. Squashes, we're just about to start our next round of squash. We have not had any real visible damage from the vine borer yet, like things wilting, but that time is definitely coming. So we're gonna start more of that. Cucumbers are another one. So these cucumbers are doing great. There's no issue, but you never know what's gonna happen, and these are a fast growing one. So, you know, you can put these fast growing crops in and let them grow. And if you think about it, the way I look at it is, you don't like, these are just starting to produce. Now is a really good time to start another seed. Stick it in a pot, keep it watered. When something happens, this starts to decline, you've already got an established plant to put into the ground, and it's just gonna take off from there. So we can definitely get that going. The squashes, same thing. Like right now is a perfect time for us to start them because they germinate really fast. And then by the time we want to put them in, we'll already have a jump start on it. You know, we can start them in a bigger pot so we don't really have to disturb the roots, because, you know, a lot of people say they don't like to be transplanted, which, by the way, all of these were transplanted in the garden and they haven't had any issues. But if you want to live to that statement, then you definitely start it in a bigger pot and stick them in the ground. I mean, as long as you don't fumble around with the roots, they're gonna be just fine. I mean, this bed's doing great. So we've got a lot of things going on here. Black-eyed peas, another one. We start those late. We started those and they're coming up just fine. Once they start shooting up, we're gonna start getting black-eyed peas before long. So now there's definitely some stuff you can't do. But like if you come over here to my son's bed, which I guess I'll give you a little update on it. We started where we were gonna put the parsnips. We ended up putting these lima beans in. So you can see that we've got lima beans growing. I mean, they germinated in 2 days. So there's gonna be plenty of lima beans to go around. The carrots, I actually believe in 4 days, yep, we have carrots starting because of the temperature outside. A lot of these crops can very easily be planted again and again and again in your garden, and just doing it on a schedule. You know, when I grow bush green beans, which I haven't grown in a couple of years, but when I grew them, they seemed like they just kind of died out. So what we'd do is we'd wait a month and then we'd plant more, and we'd wait a month and we'd plant more, and then we just kind of had a continuous flow. What I'll probably end up doing with these green beans back here is I'll probably come out and in between each plant, I'm gonna stick another green bean in. So if something happens to those, they'll die out. I can go ahead and just clip them and let them roll. And then we'll just keep getting green beans constantly. So it's all about making that schedule, knowing the plants you're gonna grow, knowing the time it takes for them to grow, and then making the adjustments necessary to keep them going. Look at that. They thought they were gonna get on there and make some more Japanese beetles. Ain't no humping in this garden. Come on, killer. Let's say you don't want to keep planting and you don't want to keep sowing seeds and you don't want to propagate, which I recommend everybody try propagating a few times just to try because it's great. But let's say that you don't want to do that. Then the best thing you can do is keep your plants alive. Give them plenty of water. Be very proactive against the insects this time of year and get them out. You know, just like I did. You know, if I see the Japanese beetle, I pluck them and I kill them. #1 way to keep your garden producing throughout the season.